Hello, horror fans, and welcome to season 2 of the Script to Screen podcast, where we delve into the spine tingling world of horror cinema. Each week, we look at the scariest scenes, unmask the deeper meanings behind your favourite horror films, and explore the psychology of fear that keeps us coming back for more.
From script analysis to scene breakdowns, we'll be dissecting your favourite horror movies to see just what makes them tick. So whether you're a seasoned horror aficionado or just starting to explore the genre, join us as we unravel the spine-tingling stories that haunt the silver screen.
I'm Will.
And I am Lee.
Oh man, it's great to be back, Lee. Back with our season 2 premiere. So we've taken on board various feedback that we've received from season 1, haven't we? And we're determined to make Script to Scream even better in season 2.
Yep, bigger, better, and badder than ever. It's exciting times.
Indeed. So how have you been, my friend? Have you watched anything good this week?
Besides, suffering through a hideous ordeal of man flu, which I am currently fighting my way through.
Yeah.
I revisited some classics this week in
Ooh.
Scott Spiegel's 1989 classic Intruder, and the timeless classic that is Chopping Mall.
Oh, wow. Do you know what, dude? That's the first time I've heard Chopping Mall referred to as a timeless classic, that's for sure.
It's something of a guilty pleasure, I'll admit, but put Barbara Crampton on my screen, and I will happily sit there all day like a teenager on TikTok. But don't sleep on Intruder though, because I think it's a highly underrated slasher, and it has moments of sheer brilliance. And though he didn't direct it, Sam Raimi's influence is all over the thing. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. Anyway, hit me with your undoubtedly highbrow viewing this week.
Well, don't know if it's highbrow, dude, but this week I did go to the cinema. I did watch Mickey 17, which is from Bong Joon-ho.
Bless you.
So you might know him from Parasite, possibly Snowpiercer. And it was really good, I thought, dude. He has this like really kooky style, which I really love. Robert Pattinson was really amazing. Like the whole cast was just amazing as well. And it's really quite kind of touching as well. It's really quite a touching movie. So definitely worth a watch, if you have a mind for that sort of thing.
Hmm. I mean, I did really enjoy Parasite. I've got to say, I still haven't checked out Snowpiercer yet, but it's been on my list for like
Worth a watch.
forever. Yeah, forever. But sometimes I think just once I'd love it if you hit me with the fact that you spent the weekend watching, I don't know, something like Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death or something. I always feel like such a lowbrow movie peasant after these exchanges.
Oh, come on. Well, we'll see. Maybe I'll plumb the depths for you one day, Lee. But if nothing else, I mean, you win the award for the best made-up movie title of the week.
Dude, that's a real movie.
Really? No.
Yeah, Google it.
Okay. Well, I'll be damned, Lee. It is real. Looks like an epic rival to the likes of Citizen Kane. Have you seen this unlikely masterpiece?
I have indeed, yes.
And
Well, you know how some movies are so bad that they kind of transcend awfulness to become something great.
so this is one of those.
No, God, no, it's truly awful. Absolutely terrible. Never watch it. It's terrible. But so what are we looking at this week?
Well, Lee, this week we are taking a deep dive into The Descent.
Oh, man, this is gonna be fun. I hope you're not claustrophobic.
I am a little bit claustrophobic as it happens, Lee, but I'll face my fears for the good of the podcast. So, originally released August 4th, 2006, The Descent was made for around 3.5 million and would go on to take an impressive 57 million at the global box office.
That is some good numbers. I remember at the time of release, there was some worry that the box office might be harmed because the movie poster featured on the side of a bus that was destroyed in a UK terrorist attack, of all things.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a sad reminder the real world is often far scarier than anything we put on the screen, right?
Yeah, amen, brother. Also of interest was that this film was released just a few weeks before a very similar movie, Bruce Hunt's The Cave.
Ah, interesting. So, how similar were they?
Well, on paper, very. Both feature a bunch of experienced cavers trapped underground and pitted against a hostile subspecies. The Cave featured a much more recognizable cast, including Yellowstone's Cole Hauser and Game of Thrones' Lena Headey, and around 10 times the Descent's production budget.
Okay, so which one actually won out at the box office?
The Cave struggled at the box office and barely recouped more than its shooting cost, despite having a much lower PG-13 rating.
Okay, so do you have any thoughts on why that might be, Lee?
If I'm brutally honest, it's nowhere near as good as The Descent. Nowhere near. I mean, despite having a much larger and more impressive set, it's an entirely forgettable affair. Although I have a sneaking suspicion that the writers of the 2021 video game House of Ashes were fans of the film, or at least the concept behind it.
Right, can't say I've played that one.
Oh, mate, if you haven't checked out the Dark Pictures anthology, Until Dawn or The Quarry, you are seriously missing out. You got to check those out.
Okay, and the House of Ashes is part of the Dark Pictures anthology?
Correct? If you're a gamer and you love horror, seriously, everyone should check it out.
Okay, so besides being a personal favorite of yours, what made you choose this particular script for us to dissect, Lee?
Okay, a few things really. Firstly, as almost the whole movie is set in basically one big giant cave, I was curious to see how the writer would go about differentiating the scene locations. And secondly, it's a really rare chance to look at a film with an all-female cast. And I thought it might make an interesting thought exercise in places to kind of imagine how an all-male cast would have handled things differently.
Oh, God, Lee. You're going to be skating on thin ice with this one, aren't you?
Not at all, not at all. I'm going to leave all gender-based jokes in the kitchen where they belong.
Dude.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's out of my system now. I promise. Don't worry. Uh, for this exercise, I recruited a room full of lads to watch this film for the first time, and I will be basing my gender-based thoughts solely on their reactions. And for the last point, basically, this is a movie that just drip feeds tension right up until the final third, when everything goes to colossal shite.
So, no scare every 10 minutes?
There are most definitely scares, but they are far more organic in nature. I mean, indeed, a lot of people find that the slow burn part of the movie is even more terrifying than the climax because it's just so damn realistic.
So, of particular note will be the scene descriptions, female driven dynamics, and the divide between slow burn and in your face horror.
Exactly, my man, exactly. We are going to be comparing the movie to a production draft of the script dated September the 3rd, 2004, and weighing in at a pretty lean 95 pages. The script is titled The Dark and is written and directed by Neil Marshall. And as always, we are using these screenplays for educational purposes only, and all rights remain with their respective owners.
Yeah. So Neil Marshall, that's a person who people may be familiar with from his directing work on the Game of Thrones episodes. So that was Blackwater and The Watchers on the Wall.
Yeah, some of the best Game of Thrones episodes. He also wrote and directed the modern classic werewolf movie Dog Soldiers, as well as more recent jaunts like Doomsday and The Lair.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Dog Soldiers, dude. I must admit, but I haven't caught Doomsday or The Lair yet.
Yeah, Doomsday is just kind of balls to the wall mental, kind of like Mad Max in Scotland. And The Lair is a little bit like The Descent in the Desert, but it's not as good.
Okay, good to know. Okay. So, to businessly, without any further delay, let's unveil the season two premiere of the Script to Screen podcast with a deep dive into The Descent. After a tragic accident, six women reunite for a caving expedition, only to become trapped deep underground. As claustrophobia and tensions rise, they discover they're not alone. Feral, flesh eating creatures stalk them in the darkness, turning their fight for survival into a harrowing descent into primal terror. So we open on a raging river, and three women wrestle a dinghy through an increasingly treacherous set of rapids. It's all exhilaration, though, as they seem to be having an absolute blast, the time of their lives. Juno stands at the forefront with her friends Sarah and Beth just behind. From the shore, Sarah's husband Paul and their daughter wave her on. It's a great first shot because even the positioning of the characters in the raft is important here. Juno, played by Natalie Mendoza, is up front, and fittingly, her character is forceful and driven. She is the unspoken leader of the group and dressed apart from the others in red. Then you have Sarah, played by Shauna MacDonald, and Beth, played by Alex Reed. They're just behind Juno, both clad in blue, and sat on the same side of a boat, showing they are equals, best friends, and happy to let Juno do her thing.
First thing that I noticed in the script is that the ages of the characters are never stated.
Yeah, interesting. Do you think that's because this is a production draft?
Almost definitely. There's some dialogue cut here as well, but it's all basic stuff and it doesn't affect the plot. Also, fun fact, the ladies really performed the rafting sequence on their own, so hats off to them for that. I am not a big fan of the open water myself, so you wouldn't catch me doing that.
Well, back on calmer waters, Juno shows off for Sarah's daughter.
Is it her daughter she's showing off for, do you think?
Well, not so sure. But it doesn't really matter at this point because she is pushed overboard and forced to swim ashore. So thankfully, Sarah's husband is there to pull Juno from the icy depths, but he's not impressed. Beth seems a little concerned by the familiarity between the two, but it's just a fleeting moment. Sarah leaves the girls to pack up, and her husband drives them back to the hotel. Bit of an awkward drive, this one, Lee. Sarah checks on her daughter and then her distant husband, who subtly recoils from her touch before responding that he's fine.
Famous last words.
Famous last words indeed, Lee. As he takes his eyes off the road and drives straight into a scaffolding van, launching two poles straight through the windscreen, impaling him.
Face punch.
Hell of a face punch, dude. So if the audience weren't paying attention before, they surely are now. We are spared from the gory details, but as we look down at the car from above, the trajectory of the poles and the blood pouring from the back seat tell us that he was not the only victim here.
Yeah, there's no dialogue for this scene in the script, and the car accident is actually caused by the vehicle in front of them and not through Paul's inattentive driving.
Yeah, that's interesting. So why do you think they made that change?
Well, from a writer's perspective, I think it adds to the guilt that Sarah must feel afterwards. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was in no way her fault, but if she hadn't been talking to Paul and distracting him slightly, he may not have crashed.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's a brutal opener. After an eerie shot of her daughter blowing out birthday candles, Sarah wakes up in the hospital, unplugs herself from the various medical equipment she's hooked up to, and ventures out into the corridor. So I just want to highlight this sickly green color cast here. As an audience, I mean, we're already kind of reeling from that last scene, and there's no respite at all here. So things really start to get worse as the lights in the corridor start to go out, plunging it into darkness. Sarah tries to flee the pursuing darkness and is about to be swallowed by it when she runs straight into Beth, who does her best to console her while Juno breaks down in the background. And it's here we officially learn Sarah's daughter did not survive the crash.
Yeah, I mean, from a metaphorical perspective here, you could say that Beth is what saved her from succumbing to the darkness, i.e., madness here.
Yeah, she does seem to be Sarah's rock for sure. So I thought this interestingly because it seemed to me like Sarah was trying to outrun the darkness, but then overtaken, she was almost kind of pursuing the light. So I thought that
Hmm.
was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. That's cool. I never thought of it like that. But also, what is it with hospital corridors being so long? I mean, I swear they are like some eerie white nexus where you can walk for hours and never get anywhere nor see another living soul. And that's not movie hospitals either, like the real things. They're the creepiest places on earth, I swear.
Yeah, they'd be a contender for sure. I mean, also, I love the way the corridor just fills with people, all of whom are totally ignoring the grieving woman.
Oh, I know, man. It's like for those two, like the world has ended, but for everyone else, it's a Tuesday.
Oh, did you just reference Street Fighter?
Ha! Now there's a movie that transcends awfulness.
Well, at least things can only get better for Sarah now, right?
Mhm.
Well, a year has passed and we find ourselves halfway across the world in the Appalachian Mountains. Sarah and Beth are driving through a gorgeous forest complete with bullet-riddled road signs.
Yeehaw! That's America for you.
Yeah, rootin' tootin'. We learn through conversation that Juno has dragged them into the middle of nowhere for some unknown adventure. And we also pick up on Beth's growing resentment towards the woman as she points out how quickly she abandoned them in Scotland the previous year.
Yeah, in the script, they are startled by some low-hanging branches hitting the car and pull over for a brief respite. Also, there are some passing bikers and some extra info about Juno, stating that she is American and seemingly quite well connected. And that's something that kind of plays a much bigger part in the sequel. And also, the script gives us this absolute gem of an action line. Suddenly, an overhanging branch bangs against the windscreen, startling Sarah. Beth looks at her and stops the car at the side of the road. There is that total rural silence that accounts for the inbreeding and the high suicide rate.
Yeah, Marshall doesn't mince his words here, does he?
Ah, love it. No, sir, he certainly does not. And also, because I kind of struggle to fully comprehend just how big these places are, the Appalachian Mountains stretch for more than 1,600 miles. And to put that in context for us Brits, the straight line distance between Land's End and John O'Groats is 603 miles.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it, dude? Insane.
Yeah.
Anyway, the girls eventually pull up to an Evil Dead style cabin in the woods where they're met by Juno, who ushers Sarah inside. Juno and Beth share their concerns about Sarah at this point.
Mm. In the script, we get some extra dialogue that just further reinforces Beth's misgivings about Juno.
So, why did they cut that, do you think? Do you think it's not to make later events too predictable, maybe?
Yeah, probably. And to be fair, I mean, Alex Reed is just killing it here. And she emotes more with a single look than any amount of dialogue could convey.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great tip for screenwriters. I think because often actors can say things with a look far more effectively than any passage of dialogue that we would write could ever kind of convey. So that said, Sarah heads inside where she's met by sisters Rebecca and Sam, who are clearly old friends, and Juno's teenage protege Holly. So Rebecca is played by Saskia Mulder and Sam by Mayanna Buring.
In the script, Holly is European and speaks broken English, but in the movies, she's played by Nora Jane Noon and is definitively Irish.
Yes, very much so. So the girls share some banter while reminiscing until Sarah butchers the vibe by reminding them of one of her dead husband's favourite sayings, love each day.
Yeah, way to kill the mood, Sarah. Also, foreshadowing.
Yeah. And outside, Holly and Sam discuss their location, Boreham Caverns, and how it's little more than a tourist trap, not a real adventure. They're interrupted by Juno, who assures them that despite Holly's misgivings, tomorrow, Lee, will be awesome.
In the script, we lose some dialogue of the girls joking around, and on the page, Juno overhears the girls dissing her intended destination and is pretty pissed off about it.
Back on the screen, and the girls enjoy some downtime before the big day, mocking Beth's new PJs and almost triggering Sarah again with talk of babies. Later that night, Sarah struggles to sleep, what with Beth snoring and the eagles crying. It's enough to keep anyone awake. Nice little show, don't tell moment with the prescription pills next to her bed here. She hears something outside and takes a look out the window, only to be jump scared with a scaffolding pole through the face.
Yeah, the movie's been pretty quiet on the scare factor so far, so I can understand why they put a jump scare in here just to kind of wake the audience up a bit and up the pulse rate.
Yeah, so I read an interesting fact about this scene and how the actress decided to put this jump scare in.
Really? Okay, elaborate.
Yeah, she took a poll.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
A pollie. She took a poll.
Fuck's sake, dude.
Oh, you fuck's sake, me. I'm giving you solid gold here. Anyway, back in the movie, and Juno is already up at the crack of dawn and out for a morning run before waking the girls to prepare for the newest adventure.
What kind of monster goes running first thing in the morning?
One with a six pack and low cholesterol, Lee, no doubt.
Fair. Fair. Once again, Juno is set apart from the group, and it's another great little character beat that shows us just how disciplined she is. Everything else plays out largely as it does on the page.
So the girls pose for a photo, which is then seamlessly superimposed in the screen along with some ominously undertonal music.
Few dialogue changes in the script, again, nothing monumental.
We get a creepy aerial shot of the girls driving through an immense forest before we join Juno, Beth, and Sarah behind the wheel.
Yeah, no offense, but I would not be getting in any car that had Sarah behind the wheel right now.
It looks like Beth shares your viewpoint, Lee. as she is clearly nervous, and Sarah is very clearly compensating here.
Yeah. In the script, Juno drives, but other than that, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, that's an interesting change there, Lee. So, do you have any thoughts on why that would be?
I had to guess, I'd probably say it's kind of twofold. Firstly, Juno is really keen for Sarah to be enjoying herself, as though she feels like she has to make things up to her, obviously. And second, having Sarah tearing through the trees behind the wheel gives us a little hint that she holds her life in very little regard.
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe Marshall had decided he needed Sarah to be seen as a little more stronger than she has thus far been depicted
Hmm.
in order to make certain plot points more believable. Either way, here we also get a nice setup of Sam struggling with the tiny buttons of her watch, the payoff to which we'll see later in the film. The girls arrive and unpack. Amidst the chaos, we see Sarah stash the vehicle keys behind the sun visor and Juno intentionally ditch the Borehamwood Caverns guidebook.
Book stashing is a little more subtle in the script, but it's an important detail, so I can see why Marshall made it more obvious here.
Yeah, and attentive viewers will get their first inkling that things could go awry as the girls head off on the trail to the caverns.
Yeah, and again, the girls have paired off with Juno and Holly in the lead, Rebecca and Sam in the middle, and Sarah and Beth bringing up the rear.
Some cursory dialogue lets us know that Juno was here scouting the area last week, and Rebecca states the golden rules. So, log a detailed flight plan so people know where you are and don't ever wander off.
Yeah, Juno looks a little sheepish here for reasons that will become apparent later. And again, she's in the lead, clad largely in striking red, showing us that at the moment she is still the dominant force in the group.
An explosive flock of birds offer a potential jump scare as the girls stumble upon a dead elk. This got me thinking about how long it's been since our last jump, Lee. So, more than 10 minutes?
Just under 7 minutes, so we are still well within the 10-minute rule.
Nice. Our adventurers finally reach the cave entrance, i.e., a big hole in the ground, and after setting up their gear, they descend into the depths.
Once again, even the way they enter the cave shows us their characters. Juno, of course, is first. Beth complains the whole way down. Sarah is just mostly silent. The two sisters come down together with Rebecca fussing over Sam, and Holly just rockets down like a maniac.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? So Sarah locates some old claw marks in the stone before triggering a storm of bats in another little jump scare. So that's well within the 10-minute rule, that one.
Yeah.
After calming Sarah, Juno announces the only way out of this cavern is down the pipe. So off our intrepid cavers go down a narrow tunnel and deeper into the cave. They emerge in a large cavern, and Sarah heads off to explore.
Yeah. Way to not wander off on your own there, Sarah. Well done. Also, the scene is quite nicely written in the script, although it does give away an important plot point quite early. Check it out.
Juno takes out one of the many phosphorus flares they have and lights it up. Now the chamber is filled with a hot white light, throwing hard shadows of countless stalactites across the walls. The roof and floor of this new cavern are littered with gigantic stalagmites and stalactites, pillars of rock formed over millions of years, sediment building upward and downward until some of them bridge the entire gap. The colour of the new rock is yellow with sulphur and red with iron. The entire chamber is an amazing spectacle. The group spread out as they enter this grand subterranean cathedral, almost Gothic in its design, each of them eager to explore their own corner of the cave. From a high ledge, we look down on the group, spread around the chamber, 6 individual pools of light moving here and there. In the centre, the flare burns steadily. In the right foreground, we become aware that what we thought was a rock is in fact something else, something alive, moving slightly, breathing, watching. Yeah, I see what you mean about spoiling the big reveal too early. So, did you see this in the film?
If it was in there, it was too subtle for me to spot, and I was looking hard, believe me. Incidentally, I think I'm going to put the end of Act 1 around about the point where they head down the pipe. What do you think?
Yeah, so I had it the moment they zip line into the cave, but it's a margin call, isn't it? So yeah, exactly where it is. It's around here somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Sarah hears something strange, but sees nothing out of the ordinary. All is good until Juno leaps out with an intentional jump scare here.
Yeah, let's go out of our way to frighten the emotionally broken shell of a woman we've dragged hundreds of feet below the earth. Good shout, Juno. Well done.
The girls take a quiet lunch break, and Juno awkwardly apologizes to Sarah about not sticking around after the accident last year. Sarah makes her excuses and heads off in search of the passage to the next cave, which she quickly locates. It's a little on the small side, and Holly takes point this time, worming through the tight crevice.
Okay, so it's here that my all-male viewing party first piped up with a resounding "fuck that" in regards to worming through that alarmingly small tunnel. The unanimous consensus was that at this point, we would have all just turned around and gone back.
A little lacking in the bravery department.
I like to think more overcompensating in the common sense department, but fair arguments could be made either way.
Would you have gone in that tiny tunnel, Lee?
The simple truth, my friend, is that I would not fit in that tiny tunnel. It would be like trying to stuff a cork back into a bottle, or like threading a needle with a pencil, or trying to stuff a newborn baby back into.
Okay, Lee. We get the picture, Lee. We get the picture.
There's a cool moment in the script that occurs after Sarah enters the tunnel, which again would have given the game away a little too early. I'll read it for you. The flare burns in the background as, in the immediate foreground, a silhouetted hand, humanoid, reaches down and picks up the half eaten candy bar. Off screen, whatever it is, sniffs the candy.
Yeah, it makes me think of the Predator Scorpion moment.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. We so need to do a Predator episode.
We'll get there, my friend. We'll get there. Anyway, back to the tunnel, and Sarah is not having a good time of it. In fact, she finds herself stuck and unable to move, Lee.
Sean McDonald is absolutely killing it here. Full panic attack mode, and justifiably so.
Yeah, it's a highly uncomfortable watch, to say the least. Thankfully, Beth is able to turn around in a wider part of the tunnel and heads back for her.
Yeah, it's Beth once again that pulls Sarah back from the brink. I think she may just be the best BFF in movie history.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that point. And we get an absolutely killer line of dialogue from Beth. Beth, Sarah, the worst thing that can happen to you has already happened.
It is heartbreaking, but it is exactly what Sarah needs to hear at the time.
Yeah, it seems so, doesn't it? So, with Beth's help, Sarah wriggles free of the cave's cold embrace. But just when things are looking up, the rocks shift and the tunnel starts to collapse. And it's a race against time to see if they can escape before everything blacks out. And once again, we see a vision of a birthday cake with 5 burning candles. Now, thankfully, everybody made it through unharmed, but the tunnel has fully collapsed, meaning there's no going back that way, Lee. Rebecca reassures everyone that Borum Caverns has 3 exits, so all is well, until, of course, Juno drops the bomb that they aren't in Borum Caverns. Oh no! And nobody is coming to rescue them. Sarah moves off from the others and examines the cavern. She catches a glimpse of something, but when she moves the light back to it, it's godly.
Juno and Beth have something of a face-off, which is a little bit more direct in the script. So check it out. Beth hisses, "The hell are you doing? What do you think this is going to do to Sarah? How much more do you think she can take? Not that you know what she's been through because you couldn't get away fast enough." Juno snaps, "You know what, Beth? We all lost something in that crash." Beth, "Oh, bullshit. What did you lose?" Juno starts to speak but bites back her words. Beth is on her and shines the torch right in her face. Beth, "What did you lose, Juno?" Juno's face says it all. A beat. Juno, "Do I have to spell it out?" Beth absorbs this. She looks at Juno in disgust, keeping the torch right on her. Beth, "Just get us out of here."
Yeah, that's a great confrontation. But again, it does give that final twist away maybe a little too early. So I think the movie does a good job of getting the point across without making it too in your face, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as screenwriters, one thing we're always trying to do is give the audience just enough information so they can work things out for themselves. If you make a twist too subtle, it can feel like it comes out of nowhere, whereas if it's too obvious, it loses all of its impact. You need to strike that fine balance of letting the audience figure it out for themselves, which in turn makes them feel smart and more involved in the story.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, but I think Marshall nails it pretty much perfectly here.
Hmm.
So, with no option but forward, the party uncover a passageway that leads to an open gorge, hundreds of meters deep. The only way out is on the other side.
If it doesn't rain, it pours, right?
Rebecca steps up and is all business. She's going to attempt to climb across it. She just needs some gear from the rope bag.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it seems the rope bag was lost during the cave in, so the girls are now in a world of trouble, Lee.
Yeah, I believe the scientific term is up shit creek without a paddle.
Yes, and who are we to argue with science, Lee, right? So, in a truly impressive feat, Rebecca is able to scale the chasm roof, spotting at the midpoint an ancient climbing piton hammered into the rock. In what will prove to be a poor but understandable choice, she hooks the rope up to the ancient failsafe before making it all the way across. The others follow without mishap. Sarah and Juno share some tense words before Sarah makes it across.
Yeah. This is missing from the script, but I like this little exchange. I think it adds reason to why Juno decides to dangerously unclip their gear as she crosses.
Yeah, it's a brave move, one that almost proves her undoing as the ancient piton comes loose and drops Juno dangerously into the chasm, the rope tearing up Rebecca's hand as she tries to save her friend. They manage to pull Juno to safety and they take stock of what the ancient climbing equipment means, while Sam bandages Rebecca's gnarly hand wound.
Mm. The ancient climbing gear also throws some new active questions into the audience's mind, like, who was here before? Why didn't they make it out?
Why indeed? Some more tight tunnels await before our cave diving cadres stumble upon some ancient cave paintings. Beth insists Juno light a flare, much to her annoyance, but Beth's hunch pays off as the cave painting depicts a second cave entrance. With hope restored, our adventurers venture deeper into the caves, unaware that something is watching them.
Yeah, this is a cool scene for a few reasons, I think. First, it shows Juno starting to lose her status in the group dynamic as Beth, then Rebecca, challenge her. Secondly, it's nice for Beth to get a moment to shine. And thirdly, this is our first undeniable proof that something else is in those caves.
Yeah, and by showing the audience and not the characters, it creates tension because we know something they don't.
Yes, because one thing this movie was lacking was tension, right? Interestingly, there's no mention of anything watching them at this point in the script.
Yeah, so the girls hit a junction with a myriad of potential pathways, and I'll be damned if this music doesn't sound a hell of a lot like the soundtrack to the thing.
Yeah, if I close my eyes now, I'm literally seeing snow and sled dogs.
So Juno proves once again why she is the leader, using a lighter to test the various passages until one offers a slight breeze.
In the script, it's actually Holly that has the idea to use her lighter.
It's Holly that takes off into the tunnel, though, thinking she can see daylight. She sprints ahead of the group.
Okay. So at this point, my testosterone-laden audience raised two important points. Number one, the ladies have been specifically warned not to wander off from the group. And number two, we know that there are massive near bottomless chasms hiding in the darkness. So why? Why in the seven hells would you turn off your flashlight while running through them?
Well, we know Holly is the impetuous hothead of the group, and she proves it here. She takes an unfortunate dive into a sinkhole, and despite Juno's superhuman dive to save her, the plucky Irish lass plummets into the darkness, taking a nasty bump on the way down for good measure.
Yep. In the script, the sinkhole is described as having countless scratch marks in the rock around her, meaning that she is clearly not the first to fall prey to this particular hazard.
Mm, ominous.
Mm.
Holly comes to pretty quickly, but just when it seems they have escaped unscathed, we are alerted to the jagged bone protruding from her leg. The girls make their way down to the injured Holly, And while Sam takes charge, Beth gives voice to what we're all thinking. That is fucking disgusting.
I think Beth is secretly my spirit animal.
Once again, Sarah is distracted by something in the darkness and wanders off again. She finds an ancient looking helmet, Lee.
On screen, it's a child's laughter that draws her away, but in the script, it's the sound of something moving, which both she and Juno hear. But Juno is busy looking after Holly.
Meanwhile, Sam forces the protruding bone back into Holly's leg in a horrifically painful moment. Sarah investigates further, and we get our first clear look at what is lurking in the caves with them. A crawler, Lee! A pale albino humanoid is glimpsed just briefly drinking from a stream. Of course, it is gone by the time Juno arrives. The script describes it as follows. She moves on. The shape appears to be moving. Step by step, she grows ever closer until the shape begins to take definite form in the farthest reach of her torchlight. It looks human. It makes a sudden move, then freezes, listening. Sarah starts, freezing herself, straining her eyes to see. It is a figure facing away from her, squatting low and hunched over, drinking from the water, its shoulders and head moving slightly. It is still very difficult to make out, but it looks incredibly gaunt and sinewy, pale yellowy white, and totally naked. So back with the group, Sarah tries to convince the group of what she saw, but nobody believes her. Not even Beth is buying it.
Yeah, I can't really blame them after all. Sarah's been through, she's not exactly the most reliable witness.
Do you think this is one of those moments where a bunch of blokes would have taken the ramblings of a grieving emotional wreck more seriously, Lee?
No, I can't really fault the ladies for that one. I mean, if Juno had been the one who saw it, or Rebecca, I think it would have carried more weight. What do you think?
Yeah, possibly. I think you might be right. So, with Sarah's sanity in doubt, the girls reach a weak waterfall which must be climbed. As always, Juno is first up.
I didn't really give it much thought until now, but these ladies must be absolutely freezing. Like I went to a natural spring in Turkey once, and the water was so cold, it was painful.
Yeah, I guess the adrenaline is keeping them going at this point. Nevertheless, they successfully scale the waterfall, only to find themselves in the midst of an animal boneyard. Sarah commandeers Holly's camera and uses the infrared mode to scan their surroundings, and it's here, lurking behind Beth in a beautifully crafted jump scare, that we are officially introduced to the crawlers. When we return to Beth, we see another figure standing at her shoulder. It's vaguely human, very pale in the green of the infrared. It's totally hairless and gaunt. Its eyes appear to be sealed closed, and it has large mutated ears and a jawline distended to accommodate a mouthful of jagged teeth. In the darkness, it appears ready to strike at Beth's back. But when Juno's torch lights it up, it rapidly retreats into the shadows. This thing is a Stygian crawler, and this is its lair.
Ah, shit meat fan, here we fucking go.
Yes, our heroines are justifiably alarmed, Lee, by the creature's appearance and try to track it as it scuttles across the ceiling. It quickly becomes clear the thing is stalking them, so they pick a tunnel at random and flee for their lives, Lee. Sarah bids Juno to lose the flare.
Yeah, they don't know the crawlers are blind at this point, but the flare is noisy, so Sarah definitely makes the right call here.
Unfortunately, they run slap bang into the crawler, which locks onto the ailing Holly and savagely rips her throat out. At which point, Sarah, Beth, Rebecca, and Sam take off in their respective twosomes.
Yeah, hats off to Juno though. She is not letting that thing have Holly without a fight.
Sarah is in the wind, leaving poor Beth in the dust.
Yeah, I really, really feel for Beth a little here. I mean, she's been there for Sarah every turn, and the moment she falls behind, Sarah is nowhere to be seen. But even when Beth falls and screams for Sarah, she's not asking for her to help. She's literally just telling her to run.
Well, you don't have to tell Sarah twice. She's halfway to Mexico until she falls down an unseen hole, breaking her headlamp and knocking herself out. Hearing Juno's struggle and not knowing where Sarah has gone, Beth heads back to help Juno. Now, speaking of Juno, she is having a tough time of it. especially when the crawler calls for backup and another one drags Holly's body away while the other tries to rip out Juno's throat. Juno is no easy prey, however, and goes full murder mode on the predatory cave dweller, killing it with her climbing axe. Something moves behind her and she spins to attack, accidentally spiking her axe through Beth's throat. Lee.
Oh, poor Beth. She deserves so much better than this.
Yeah, no argument from me there. The mortally wounded Beth pulls off Juno's beloved necklace and weakly begs her not to leave her, but of course she does. Okay, so thoughts, Lee?
Okay, so I feel that Juno is ultimately not to blame for what happened to Beth here. I mean, she's literally seconds away from fighting for her very life and killing what could arguably be classed as a human, only for something to sneak up behind her and trigger basically an adrenaline-based reaction.
Yeah, seeing how much you love Beth, I really thought you were going to be gunning for Juno on this one.
Well, if Sarah hadn't ditched her best friend like that, then this would never have happened. And no, Juno is not to blame for attacking Beth, although you could definitely argue that she is way out of line for abandoning her afterward, especially seeing as how hard she fought to save Holly, who was clearly a goner. I mean, what do you think about this scene?
Yeah, I think the stab in the throat is clearly an accident, but leaving Beth, I mean, that's pretty low on Juno's part. I really think that's pretty low. I mean, if I stabbed you in the throat, Lee, and there are albino flesh-eating cave crawlers, coming up, yeah, no, actually, to be honest, I'd probably leave you too.
Oh, dude.
But we join Rebecca and Sam as they regroup in the caves. Sam is close to losing it, but thankfully her big sister is there to take charge. They light up some glow sticks and move deeper into the caves, unaware that a crawler was perched above them the whole time. Back to Sarah and a creepy jump scare of her dead daughter turning into a crawler before she wakes to find herself in an abattoir littered with human remains, ancient mining equipment.
And a dead werewolf.
Really?
Yep, that dead wolf is a prop from Marshall's Werewolf Classic Dog Soldiers.
Ah, nice.
I, for one, would love to know the canonical story of how the crawlers took down a werewolf. That would make for one hell of a sequel or prequel. That would just make for a hell of a movie in general.
Oh, wouldn't it just? But judging by Sarah's reaction, it really does not smell good down here. She retrieves the camcorder and sinks back into the shadows as poor Holly's corpse is dumped into the pit. Sarah watches on infrared as the creatures start devouring her friend. Meanwhile, Rebecca and Sam hit another chasm and are forced to hide on a rock shelf as more crawlers approach. Back in the abattoir, Sarah is almost discovered by a crawler but is saved by Juno calling for her, which lures the creature away.
In the script, this is actually a named crawler known as Scar, as it bears the mark of Juno's axe and is the first crawler they actually encountered in the bone pit.
Yeah, I mean it's a totally horrific scene. The thing is right up in her face in all its gruesome glory, and the green hue of the camcorder just makes it seem all the more sinister.
He sure is one ugly son of a bitch.
Yeah, yeah, his mother must have been so disappointed. So Rebecca and Sam aren't faring much better, though, as one of the creatures moves past them only inches away. It seems like it can smell something amiss, but with the girls remaining deadly silent, it cannot sense them and moves away. Sam comes to the realization that it can't see them just as her watch alarm goes off, bringing the creature hurtling back. Thankfully, she tosses it just in time, and they are safe, for now at least. From deeper in the caves, Juno hears the watch and moves to investigate. Her calls bring the crawler away from the sisters, who seem happy to let Juno draw all the attention to herself at this point.
It sure is relentless, isn't it?
Ah, it sure is, dude. So back in the abattoir, Sarah plunders Holly's corpse and an old mining lamp to fashion herself a makeshift torch.
Yeah, Holly is so squelchy in this scene. It's really disturbing.
Yeah, visually as well. So when Sarah lights that torch, we get that gorgeous shot of her side on, and it looks like she's in hell, doesn't it?
Does.
So Rebecca and Sam are trying to find a safe route from the cave when we are hit with an awesome fake out jump scare as a crawler drops from the ceiling and attacks Rebecca, who bids her baby sister to run. which she does, but luckily runs straight into Juno, who has now gone full Rambo and dispatches the crawler with brutal efficiency.
In the script, it's more of a group beatdown than a one-sided execution, so check it out. Suddenly, another pick comes whooshing out of the darkness, spinning through the air and embedding itself in the creature's back. The crawler buckles backward, trying to pull the pick out from between its shoulders. Rebecca looks up just as Juno, followed by Sam, appears from the shadows beyond. Then she drives her own pick into the crawler's chest, and all three women attack the beast with whatever comes to hand. The crawler lets out a piercing shriek, like a cry for help, as it goes down beneath the blows. Also, Sam is far more reluctant to abandon her sister in the script, which is a nice touch.
There's a great unspoken moment here with Juno, who is still riding an adrenaline rush. She looks at Rebecca almost like she's about to fight her, and when Rebecca hugs her instead, Juno almost breaks down.
Yeah, I love the bit where Sam gives the dead crawler a hard kick upon learning of her friend's demise. It's another great little moment, just no dialogue needed.
Yeah, take that, you son of a bitch. So Juno instructs soon to be Dr. Sam to analyze the dead creature so they know what they're up against. Sam concludes that the creatures are totally blind and hunt by sound like a bat. Juno tells them she may have found a way out, but she won't leave without Sarah.
Okay, so at this point, the lads I was watching the film with dropped this absolute banger. Okay, it went something like this. So all these women have to do to survive is stay quiet and stop talking. Yeah? Well, they've shit it then, haven't they?
Yes, and there we have it, folks. Lee is officially cancelled. So tune in next week for a one-man show.
Oh, don't shoot the messenger, dude. Don't shoot the messenger. But back on topic, how good a leader is Juno here? I mean, firstly, she saves her friends. Secondly, she stays calm and orders their expert to analyze the enemy so they know what they are fighting. And thirdly, she will not leave Sarah behind.
Yeah, shame she didn't share that view for Beth.
I know, I know. I mean, thematically, it makes sense, but I guess Juno has to do something else wrong. Otherwise, nobody would be on Sarah's side in that final confrontation, and the audience could well turn on her.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually, and touches on something we've studied. That being audience engagement and anticipating how they're going to react in certain situations.
Mm. In the script, Sam's examination of the crawler goes a little deeper, attributing their skin color to a blood disease and theorizing that they are the cavemen that created the paintings that they viewed earlier, only they've evolved or maybe devolved to thrive in their environment.
Yeah, so back to Sarah now, and her journey through this bloody hell continues as she comes upon a mortally wounded Beth. Her bloody BFF warns her about Juno and gives her the bloody necklace she tore from Juno's neck. We see it engraved with Paul's favourite saying, "Love each day."
Yeah. Even now, half eaten and dying, Beth is telling Sarah how sorry she is. But in the script here, the dialogue is a lot more on the nose, with Beth literally spelling it out and Sarah reliving flashbacks of the rapids in Scotland. It does also highlight the fact that Beth's legs have been largely eaten by crawlers, something you can kind of see in the film, but it's not particularly clear. And so again, the boys chirped up here, this time about Juno's necklace, which she has been wearing freely this whole time, and pointing out that not once has it flipped over to reveal the massive inscription on the other side. You know, it's not the most subtle thing in the world to be sure, and probably not the smartest thing to wear around your dead lover's wife.
Yeah, in hindsight, it's not the smartest move on Juno's account, is it? Poor Sarah's descent into hell continues, though, as the sound of approaching crawlers causes Beth to beg her to end her suffering. And with a heavy heart, Sarah bashes her BFF's brain in with a jagged rock.
Yeah, as I've said before, Beth's always been the one to save her from going over the edge, and it's strangely poetic that, in a way, she may be the one that finally pushes her over it.
There's no respite for Sarah, though, as she is attacked by what looks to be a little kiddie crawler.
Oh, that's kind of cute.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing things differently here, I think. We've got different lenses, dude, I think. Yeah, any thoughts of this creature triggering some lost maternal instinct are quickly shattered as Sarah stomps the little critter's head in.
Fatality.
She may come to regret that choice, though, as the crawler's mama comes looking for it, and it's almost enough to garner some sympathy as the creature whines piteously over its dead offspring before leaping to attack Sarah, who tries to flee, only to fall straight into a pool of blood.
Yeah, there's no juvenile beast in the script and no mention of this obviously female creature either. The blood pool is also clarified to be some kind of drainage pit for the abattoir. And we also get this fantastic description of Sarah as she emerges from the pool. When Sarah surfaces again, all trace of her beauty and humanity have vanished. She is covered in blood. After this hellish baptism, Sarah is now as frightening as anything else in the cave.
And it's a hauntingly beautiful shot as she emerges from the pool, surrounded by death and viscera. I love the fact that she doesn't burst out, gasping for air. It's slow and measured, almost emotionless. So quite reminiscent of Apocalypse Now, I think.
Mm. Best shot in the whole film, I think, right there.
It's still not over though, as the female emerges from the pool and attacks again. It's a bloody fight, but Sarah is able to overcome with the help of a chunk of deer antler. Sarah crawls out onto a rock as yet another crawler arrives. This one literally crawls on top of her before moving away and giving her the chance to beat it to death with an animal bone.
And that look in Sarah's eyes, man, she is gone now.
Yeah, okay, so I have a question.
Okay, fire away.
How was that crawler literally on top of her and didn't sense her?
Okay, so I think it's a pit full of bodies, so I guess it just thought she was another corpse. But what I find more interesting is that it didn't react to the heat of the burning torch, less than a foot away from it.
Yeah, that's also a good point. It does make for a great shot, though, doesn't it?
Oh, it's awesome shot, awesome.
Sarah lets out a soul wrenching scream, which is heard by Juno and the others.
Yeah. Start of Act 3 here.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Lee. Yeah. Incidentally, I think it's this change in Sarah which Marshall may have been thinking of when he changed the drivers earlier in the film. Anyway, Rebecca is quick to write Sarah off, but Juno is reluctant to leave her friend. Unfortunately, a horde of crawlers is advancing on them, so Juno screams for them to run.
Looks like the lads were right.
Yeah, screaming is probably not the best idea in front of a group of hostile creatures that hunt with sound. Sam is off again and this time takes a wrong turn. She hits a chasm similar to the one Rebecca traversed earlier, and in an effort to emulate her big sister, she attempts to cross. The rocks do a number on her, and despite Juno and Rebecca's pleas, she is not turning back. Tragedy strikes now in the form of a crawler on the ceiling, and after a brief struggle, the creature rips out her throat.
Damn it.
Yeah, Sarah refuses to go out alone though, and with her final breath, she latches onto the crawler, stabs it, and rips it from the cave roof and launches it into the underground river far below.
In the script, we get the script sin of a long drawn out no.
Go on then, Lee. How many O's?
Five N's and 10 O's.
Wow, that could be a record.
I wasn't actually keeping count before, but I feel like we have to now.
Yeah, we definitely have to keep count from now on. Rebecca doesn't have time to grieve for long, though, as she is dragged off by a crawler, her fingernails scraping against the cold stone. Juno tries to save her, but the creature is already nose deep in Rebecca's entrails, and with no other means of escape, Juno leaps into the chasm. She splashes down right next to the crawler that Sam sent to a watery grave, only, wouldn't you know it, the damn thing is still alive, and Juno has to use the knife still stuck in its side to finish it off. Using her climbing axe, Juno then starts to scale the wall, and it looks like she might fall when Sarah emerges from a fissure and drags Juno inside.
Yeah, back to the color dynamic we were talking about earlier. See now, Sarah is literally bathed in red. She is now positioned to challenge Juno for the alpha position.
Yeah, and Juno looks more scared of Sarah here than she has anything else we've seen in the cave up until this point, and I can't say I blame her. Sarah asks what happened to the others, specifically Beth, and Juno replies that she saw Beth die.
Yeah, I like to think if Juno had come clean here, told the truth of what happened, Sarah may have forgiven her. As I said earlier, Juno has been an almost perfect leader since shit hit the fan.
Yeah, almost. I mean, let's not forget who it was who brought them into this hellish cave against their will in the first place.
You know, I actually had forgotten that part.
So Sarah and Juno head for the exit. And I have to say, I would not be betting against these ladies at this point. Three crawlers lie in wait, and what follows is a truly brutal encounter as the two species battle tooth and nail, with our blood soaked ladies finally coming out on top.
Yeah, pretty much bang on with the script here, only it's stressed that the crawler which Juno dispatches is her old nemesis Scar. And a quick note on this. When you have multitude of faceless, seemingly identical enemies, identifying one with a physical anomaly is a great way to personalize the enemy and deepen the conflict to an individual level.
Yeah, so this would be like the tumor orc in Return of the King.
Yeah, exactly. Or Stumpy in Tremors. You know, I mean, personally, I think it works best when, like here and with Tremors, the abnormality is somehow a result of the protagonist's actions. Not that I'm trying to take anything away from Lord of the Rings or anything, but I think that personal connection just kind of elevates the conflict to another level.
So it's finally time for the face off that's been building for the entire movie now. Sarah stares Juno down, revealing she has her necklace and knows everything about Beth, about Paul. It's a breathtaking moment.
Not a single word is spoken. It's all in the visuals and it's perfect. McDonald and Mendoza just nail it. And there is some dialogue in the script as Juno tries to explain herself, but it's so much better without it.
Yeah, totally agree. So the sound of approaching crawlers breaks the standoff, and as Juno looks away, Sarah shockingly buries the climbing axe in her knee.
That is gonna leave a mark.
Oh my goodness. Sarah grabs the torch and abandons Juno to her fate, which, judging by the amount of crawlers emerging from the darkness, will not be a pleasant one.
Juno ain't going out like some punk though. She rips the axe from her leg and turns to face the incoming horde.
And Sarah takes another nasty fall and blacks out for a moment before waking to daylight on her face. She is so close to freedom, clawing her way up a mountain of bones before emerging reborn into the daylight of the forest.
In the script, she stumbles from a cave, and the sound of crawlers follows her as she flees through the woods.
Yeah, that visual of her clawing her way out of the earth is so much better.
Yeah, agreed. But still,
But what?
okay. Imagine if you're some hiker in the woods, right? It's a beautiful day, and you need to take a leak. So you pick a suitable tree, start streaming, and then a bloody screaming woman claws her way out of the ground in front of you.
Yeah, you need to rein in those intrusive thoughts, dude.
It would cause some shriveling for sure.
Oh my God, can you imagine? So Sarah makes it back to the vehicles, retrieves the keys from the sun visor, and hits the road. After some time, she pulls over, overcome with emotion. She breaks down, only to see Juno's a bloody corpse beside her in the passenger seat.
The end.
Wait, what?
For our American friends, this is where the movie ends, as what follows was deemed too bleak and depressing for our American audiences.
What in the Sorcerer's Stone is that all about, Lee?
I know, right? I think somebody needs to give our friends across the pond some more credit, methinks.
Well, any oversensitive Americans listening may want to cover their ears now, as Juno's ghostly apparition jolts Sarah back to reality. She hasn't left the cave at all. She's still miles underground. Once again, she sees a vision of her daughter, five candles on her birthday cake, and as we pull out for the final shot, we see that Sarah has fully lost her mind, staring into the dying flames of her torch as the darkness envelops her.
Did you notice an extra candle gets added to the cake?
I did not, Lee.
Yep, 6 candles, 6 lives lost to the cave.
Damn. Well, it's definitely a Debbie Downer for sure.
Yep. So hit me up, dude. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, dude, let me tell you what I thought. I thought it was a really good movie. I did enjoy it. I thought it was really effective, very tense. I thought the drama between the girls was played really well, and the sense of kind of claustrophobia was really well captured and sort of transferred to the audience. Really kind of imposes itself upon you when you're watching the film. I thought there were some really effective jump scares, and the pace of the film was really good. I like the kind of more expressionistic moments that Marshall uses with the lights in the hospital, the cake, etc. I thought it was really good use of that and sort of show don't tell, and trying to sort of get into Sarah's headspace. I thought that was pretty effective. I did have a couple of beefs. I thought I actually got to the point where like it was kind of jump scare fatigue. And I did find the kind of beefiness of the crawlers to be somewhat distracting. And so I was pulled out of some of the scenes, kind of thinking, like these guys are really pretty jacked. Yeah, but what are your thoughts?
It's that caveman diet trend, dude. Makes you buff as. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge supporter of this film. It blew my mind the first time I watched it, and it still has an effect on me decades later. I genuinely don't think I can really fault it, and it's definitely up there in perfect movie territory for me.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, I hear where you're coming from on the jump scare fatigue, but I'm gonna argue that that was the whole point. I mean, the first two acts break you down slowly, and then by the time the third act kind of assaults you, you're in a similar state to these hardy women. You're totally exhausted, but you have no choice but to endure till the end. That's my sort of take on it anyway. But anyway, let's break this baby down.
Okay, well, first up, let's take a look at the reasons why you chose this film to begin with, Lee. So, how does Marshall handle the scene descriptions in what is essentially one giant cave?
He actually does a really clever thing here. I mean, up until page 27, everything in the slug lines is what you'd expect: interior, exterior, location, time of day, night. However, once they descend into the cave, things change. Day and night goes out the window. Instead, we have simply dark. So when they're in the cave, day and night is irrelevant. So instead, we just have dark and light. As for the scene descriptions, they're pretty much what you'd expect. I mean, some examples are honeycomb, tunnel, lair, pretty much just normal kind of scene descriptions there.
Yeah, that's cool. Makes perfect sense as well. Okay, so bear in mind the future of the podcast may hang in the balance here, Lee. How important is the all-female dynamic?
Okay, obvious puns aside, it is everything. This movie would have been a completely different beast if you'd stuck a bunch of guys in that cave, and it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good.
Yeah, so why do you think that is?
For starters, I think the audience expectations would be different. If there were a bunch of guys there, there would be this unspoken expectation for them to immediately fight back. For better or for worse, action heroes have more often been testosterone-laden males. I mean, for every one Ripley we've had over the years, there have been hundreds of mostly inferior male counterparts.
Yeah, so why inferior, Lee?
Well, because Ripley is a rounded character, that's why she works so well. She's smart, she's capable, she's brave. Most action heroes, especially back in the day, were pretty two-dimensional.
Okay, okay. So what would an all-male version of this film look like, do you think?
Closest I can think of would be 2017's The Ritual.
Okay, I've not seen that one.
Ah, it's bloody good, man, bloody good. Really horrific opening, and one of the best monster designs I've ever seen.
Okay. Okay, so finally the let's talk about the structure. So, I mean, you were bang on earlier when you said about the slow burn, followed by the non-stop kind of onslaught. So, why do you think Marshall held off on the crawlers for so long?
I think this is very much a film in three parts. It's almost three different movies in a way. I mean, part one hits us with the trauma and grief of losing people we love. It's a brutal face punch almost from the opening scene, and we're just left with Sarah barely holding on. And then it's versus the cave. It's women versus nature. And that cave throws everything that it has at our heroines. And then finally, when we spent like the last 50 or so minutes being put through an emotional ringer, when you think things can't possibly get any worse, we get the crawlers. And from that moment they appear, the pacing of the film does not let up for a minute. It's one brutal moment after another. And like the cavers themselves, we don't get a minute to rest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I think we need those early sort of emotional beats to care about these characters and set up the dynamics that will play out later. And then we have an act which is really all about raising the audience's tension levels with the cramped claustrophobia of the caves. And once again, I mean that sort of once that final section starts, like you said, I mean it just all kicks off and it is just relentless. I do think Marshall is taking the audience through the stages needed to make the film effective. You know, he makes us care. He gets us kind of invested in the characters. He then sort of raises the tension slowly and the specter of danger, and then boom, you know, he hits us with this all-out kind of creature horror brutality.
Glorious, absolutely freaking glorious, mate. So, what are your thoughts on the themes at play here?
Yes, okay. If we're kind of referencing the Parker themes like we did sort of with season one, I think, you know, we're certainly dealing with fear of death and fear of the unknown. In a wider, sort of more general sense, I think the film is obviously kind of looking at grief and loss, guilt, trauma, and certainly the nature of friendship too. Yeah. So, what about you?
Well, as always, I think you've pretty much nailed it. But I think if I wanted to be really out there, I think a slightly weak argument could be made, that the themes at play here, desire for validation or justice. I mean, if you look at the film from Juno's perspective, I mean, she is living with a lot of guilt and seeks to justify or absolve her actions by bringing Sarah back into the fold and helping her deal with her grief. And in doing so, help Juno contend with hers. I mean, let's not forget, Juno also lost the man she loved and would have been forced to conceal her feelings for the most part of it.
Mm, yeah, that is interesting. That's interesting. Okay, so let's take a closer look at these ladies. Are there any sort of notable character introductions for you, Lee?
The opening is quite interesting here. I mean, with the introduction of Juno, Sarah, and Beth. I know we touched on it earlier, but let me just read it for you. Lurching headlong over the edge of a fall, we are thrust into the heart of the action, pile driving down the rapids with an exuberant American at the helm. Juno Kaplan, feisty, sexy, and hard as nails, is steering the rubber raft as her friends Sarah and Beth paddle frantically on each side. It is all about Juno. Sarah and Beth get nothing.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah, especially in Sarah's case with her being you're pretty much like the main character, right? The
Hmm.
protagonist. Yeah, so I think for me, there's sort of something that was quite interesting. It's not really a character introduction per se, but there's this really interesting kind of passage of dialogue in the script where the characters describe each other while ostensibly describing the types of people they would sort of encounter or meet on a mixed adventure group. So I'll read that through. Rebecca continued. There's a real market for women who don't want the bullshit that comes with a mixed group. Holly, what bullshit? Juno, teasing, of Rebecca. Well, there's the gear freaks. Those guys who have to have the latest gadget and use it all the time. No room for instinct. Rebecca laughs, realizing that Juno's comment is directed at her. She continues the joke. Rebecca, of Holly. And the peak baggers. They don't care where they are. It's just about whether they've got to the top of enough of them. Sarah, of Juno. And the guys who've got to be the leader. You've got to hold the map and want to turn the whole thing into the army. I've had them. Beth to Sam. And the guys who make you the baby of the group, even if you've done more than them. Rebecca to Holly. See, you just don't get that bullshit with women. They all laugh. So I just thought this was a really interesting kind of technique, and it's really quite engaging as well, you know.
Yeah, it is a really good scene, actually. It's a shame that they never put that in. So another thing I think that's great about the cast here is that there are no real I'm happy they're dead characters.
So you're going to have to explain that one, Lee.
Okay. So in most horror movies, there's at least one character that deserves their fate, someone whom the audience will cheer when they die. But in this film, none of the girls really deserve their fate, and we're not really happy to see any of them die.
Yeah, you could possibly make an argument for Holly or Juno, but I think maybe you just have a serious sadistic streak.
It could be. You think that's bad? Wait to hear my next point.
I have law enforcement already on speed dial, Lee.
Okay. So hear me out. The crawlers aren't really the bad guys in this film.
Really?
Yeah, seriously, right? I mean, just think about it. They've been living underground for thousands of years. They don't mess with people unless they're out in the backwoods. They're essentially animals that resemble humans, living their best life. And then one day, these six gals rock up in their house uninvited. The crawlers don't even attack them until basically they barge into their kitchen. We know they have infant crawlers running around nearby too, so their aggression is largely justified in protecting their children. I mean, if the crawlers were lions, and the girls forced their way into their den. You wouldn't blame the lions for attacking them, would you?
Yeah, see, I'm a little bit annoyed at how much sense you're making here, Lee.
But even Marshall has said, and I quote, "This isn't about six cavers being attacked by savage monsters. This is a film about a happy society of savage monsters being attacked by these girls because they kind of mete out as much terror and pain as the crawlers ever do."
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll give you that one. Maybe the crawlers are not as evil as they're portrayed here. So it's, it's like a bit like the graboids in Tremors, right? On the subject, though, just how many crawlers are there? So for every one the girl kills, two more of them seem to pop up in its place.
Yeah, that's got a good point you bring up. Are you familiar with MVP?
That would be most
No,
valuable.
no, 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 no. MVP also stands for minimum viable population and is the scientific number of individuals required to maintain a stable breeding population.
More science from Lee.
Okay, so I've done a little research here, and while the numbers fluctuate depending on the circumstances, the general MVP figure required to prevent significant inbreeding is around 4,169. Now, I'm not convinced that there isn't more than a little inbreeding on display regarding the crawlers, so I'm going to half that number and round down. So I propose that there are probably a couple of thousand of these creatures lurking in those caves, most likely in separate small communities. I mean, this is all purely speculation on my part, and no doubt anyone with more than a passing scientific knowledge will have a far better answer than I do.
Yeah, it's still quite interesting to contemplate, though, isn't it? Honestly, it's not something I've really even sort of spared a thought about. So yeah, yeah. Anyways, going back to the structure, Lee, we've ascertained that it's a story in three acts, with the crawlers becoming the antagonistic force around the midway point of Act Two.
Sounds about right.
So, how are we for scares? Does it follow the 10-minute rule throughout?
Well, let's take a look. I mean, the film's runtime is around an hour and 40 minutes. So we decided that Act 1 runs for around 25 minutes, during which our frights consist almost entirely of jump scares. We have our opening face punch at 4 minutes, where Sarah's family is final destination. And then a minute later, we get the scene in the hospital with the lights going out. And then we get the pole through the window jump scare at 14 minutes.
Okay, so keeping with the rules so far.
Indeedy, indeedy. And then 6.5 minutes later, at around 20 minutes and 30 seconds, we get the dead elk scare. Just before we move into Act 2, we get the bat jump scare at around 24 minutes. And then into Act 2, and there is a definite shift in the scarology.
Scarology.
No?
No, I like it. I think you've coined a new phrase there, Lee.
Ah, get in. Okay, so as I was saying, from Act 2 onward, we shift our fear focus away from Sarah and her grief to the cave as the antagonistic force. So our first real scare in Act 2 is Juno jumping out at Sarah at around 27 minutes 15 seconds, and we then get the cave tunnel collapse scene, which begins at 29 minutes and 30 seconds and lasts for 5.5 minutes.
It's a long 5.5 minutes too, but not as long as our next moment of tension, the chasm scene, which runs from the 39-minute mark for 6.5 minutes.
I like how, with the cave as our opposing force, we've gone from unpredictable jump scares to long, slow burn ordeals.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't have to wait long for the next one, as it's Holly and her gruesome injury that drags us from the 48:30 mark through to 54 minutes.
Yeah. And then at 56:35, we get the first crawler attack. And from that point on, the scares are so frequent, I just didn't bother counting them. But needless to say, it is constant and unrelenting.
Oh, it's so unrelenting, isn't it? It's unbelievable. Okay, so we start out with our character building first act, peppered with jump scares to remind us that we're watching a horror movie. Then we transition to long, drawn out physical ordeals as the ladies try to conquer the cave before being hit with a non stop assault in the last third of the film. So it's a great way to play with pacing and keep the audience on the edge of their seats. So as I mentioned before, though, I think this is it's just a personal reaction. I think I got a little bit of jump scare fatigue with this film. I think they maybe became less effective as the movie went on. So it's no reflection on the quality of the film at all. But yeah, got a little burned out on the scares after a while. So on the subject of scares, Lee, what's your scariest moment?
Before I get to that, I just want to interject something which I've just popped into my head as you were saying about the jump scares becoming less powerful. Have you ever heard the story about Jaws, where the shark kind of first comes out of the water while Brody is doing the chum,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was like a big jump scare?
No, tell me.
Well, when and I'm just quoting this from memory, so I may be slightly off, but yeah, like when they first showed that to the test audiences, they all like jumped out of their seats. They were terrified.
Yeah.
But then he added in the scene with Ben Tramer, and I think that was his name was, I can't remember exactly, and the head in the boat.
Oh
You know
yeah.
that scene?
Yep.
So he added that scene in, and then the following test audience jumped out of their seats at that one, and then only about half of them jumped out of their seats at the shark coming out of the
Right.
water. And Spielberg has kind of said that, you know, you're going to get like
Yeah,
one
yeah,
really
yeah.
good jump scare. Once you've scared them once, then you know it doesn't have that same power. You know, it's the law of diminishing returns.
Jump scare fatigue, baby.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry to waffle on, but my scariest moment, without a doubt, it is the collapsing tunnel scene. I mean, I get uneasy just thinking about it, and I'm not especially claustrophobic, but just the thought of being trapped like that freaks me out. I mean, hell, if you're feeling brave enough, Google the Nutty Putty Cave tragedy if you want to feel even more claustrophobic.
The the what? I mean, look, Lee, Lee, I know you well enough to not look up anything that you suggest. But yeah, I mean, honestly do like I do get a little claustrophobic, and it was a tough, that was a tough few minutes of cinema for me. That that cave collapsing, I think, and even just worming through the caves in general was a little tough to kind of actually endure. But anyway, spirit of choosing something different, I thought there were two moments that I found pretty scary. The first was when we saw the first crawler drinking. And I know it's not necessarily like a jump scare, but something about that image was just pretty chilling for me. It's pretty terrifying. And the second was more of a sort of genuine jump scare. And this was when the we see the crawler stood behind Beth through the infrared camera. And I think as soon as that infrared comes on, like something is going to happen. And yeah, the tension's building the whole time you're looking through that kind of lens. So yeah, that was really effective.
That was a bloody good one, bloody good one. So, what do you think we've learned from this particular script?
Okay, well, I think there are a few things. I think it's interesting to read a script written by a writer director. So I know this is kind of you said it's a production script, right? It's kind of
Mm,
a bit
yeah.
closer to production. But, I think with the Descent script, Marshall does include a fair bit of camera direction or passages which kind of explicitly relate to how a scene or image will be viewed by the audience. So I picked out a few examples. Interior, far side of canyon, dark. Sarah stands behind Beth looking into the cleft before turning back in a dreamlike slow mo to look back at Juno crossing. Exterior, lodge, night. The lodge, its windows lit up, looks invitingly warm against the forbidding backdrop of the vast forest. We can vaguely see the women enjoying themselves inside, the sound of their laughter and conversation fading on the breeze. We hold this for a moment and then very slowly begin to track in on the window. Exterior, car, day. Moving across the front of the windscreen as the wipers clunk and whine back and forth, we pull focus to Jessica playing in the back, then pull focus again to see Paul turn from glancing at her to the road ahead. Okay, so I thought this was interesting because this is something, we're generally sort of advised against doing in screenwriting, but it's interesting how writer directors can sometimes include these descriptions. So I also love how everything in this film has a purpose. There's no chaff to cut away here. Even the title, The Descent, has multiple meanings. So you could take it at face value and assume it's about the woman's descent into the cave and their struggles to survive. Or you could view it as Sarah's descent into madness at the loss of her family. I also want to expand on the point you made earlier regarding the color theory and use of color in the film. So I found this sort of especially apparent in the last quarter of the film when the surviving cast is separated, but we can easily identify who we're watching via the light source used. So Juno, of course, has red flares. The sisters use green glow lights, and Sarah has an open flame. But we see a transition through the film too. So initially, we see a classic blue and yellow color palette. Now, this can be sort of quite traditionally is generally referred to as something like an orange and teal color palette. And once you're aware of this, actually, it's really hard to unsee, as there's so many films that use this color palette. Um, so once we're in the cave, we switch to red and green. We have the red of the flares and the blood, of course, and the green of the glow lights and the infrared. Now, both these sets of colors are complementary to each other. So what that means is if you look at a color wheel, blue sits opposite yellow and red opposite green. It's really interesting to sort of speculate what Marshall is saying with these color choices, though, and if he had sort of something in mind
Hmm.
as we sort of transition through the film
Yeah.
and using these different types of color. In the script, Marshall does seem to be using yellow as a specific piece of kind of foreboding relating to the yellow eyes of the crawlers or the yellowness of the crawlers. So just to illustrate this, here's a kind of a little passage from the film. Interior first 4x4 day. Juno is driving with Sarah beside her and Beth in the back. It's bumpy. Sarah is gazing out of the window, distant, her vision slightly blurred. A streak of yellow out of the corner of her eye. She turns her head quickly, but there's nothing there. Yeah, so I just thought it was really interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting use of
Yeah.
color. He's obviously mentioned that in the script as well,
Yeah.
a few times, and I think it's kind of alluding to the sort of sallow yellowness of the crawlers in some way,
Hmm.
and setting up their appearance. You know, some sort of foretelling of what's to come.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting stuff. What about you, dude?
And for me, it's all about those intense and powerful character moments that in the script are written with some dialogue, but on the screen are portrayed without a word and absolutely make the film in my eyes. I mean, to clarify, I guess it's hard to fully transcribe silent moments like these on the
Mm,
page, but I'd recommend Paulo Braga's fantastic book, Words in Action, especially the introductory chapter on the perfect dialogue.
cool. So, out of curiosity, what is the perfect dialogue?
Perfect dialogue is no dialogue at all,
Of
but
course, it
it's
is.
a great book. Um, but if I could take a moment to go back to a point you just made about the title being a reference to Sarah's descent into madness, there was, up until the release of the sequel, a popular theory that the crawlers didn't exist at all, and that Sarah had in fact lost her mind in the cave and slaughtered her friends, hallucinating them as crawlers, basically.
So let's take a moment to talk about the sequel. Is it worth a watch, Lee?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. But it is a poor follow-up that brings nothing new to the table, adds a ton of disposable, unmemorable characters that you couldn't give a shit about, and just kind of lessens the overall impact of the original. I know that doesn't like hype it up much, but it has a few moments that makes it worth a watch in my eyes.
Okay, so just barely then, basically.
Yeah, like I said, there's a couple of good moments, and without spoiling too much, Shauna McDonald returns, so it's worth watching it just for her alone.
Oh man, what excuse could they possibly have for getting Sarah back into those caves, dude?
My friend, that old movie cliche, amnesia.
Oh, say no more, say no more. Okay, Zilly, I thought it might be a good idea for us to give both the film and the screenplay a rating for season two, so that we can
Okay.
ascertain which of the two we thought was better.
Nice. I like it.
Okay, so for me, the film was a solid 6.5 out of 10. Gave it a little half there. The script fared slightly better with a solid 7 out of 10. What about you?
Okay. That's really interesting, actually. I mean, you're going to roll your eyes at me, but I have the film at 10 out of 10 because I honestly can't think of any way I could improve that film. You know, maybe slightly better cave effects, but then you would lose some of the sort of claustrophobia. So it really is pretty much perfect film territory for me. And like you, I also have the script at 7 out of 10.
There
So
we go.
that gives the script a total of 14 out of 20 and the film 16 and a half out of 20.
Okay. Okay. Interesting stuff. 10 out of 10 is ludicrously. Can't
It
give a
is
film
not
a 10 out of
ludicrous.
10.
That is a perfect. It's a damn near perfect film. Damn near perfect film.
Absolutely ludicrous. Okay, so I mean, just a few points. I think for me, there are a couple of things I think that pulled me out from the film. I think the costumes, when I was reading the script, I think he made slightly better job. This is why I sort of rated them slightly differently. Is he sort of mentioned the crawlers to be sort of thin and kind of sallow and
Hmm.
sort of slimy, sort of thin creatures, kind of gaunt. And I think that's for me sort of a more realistic, I guess, kind of vision of cave dwellers. And as I
Hmm.
say, like these guys and girls, whoever they are in these kind of costumes, are pretty hench.
Yeah.
So that kind of pulled me out a little bit. I thought, as I say, scare fatigue. We discussed that a little bit. Um, I did find it a bit bleak,
Hmm.
as a film, and struggled a little bit to, I guess, emotionally connect with that kind of bleakness.
Yeah.
And the other thing is really just kind of the lights in the cave. It's always difficult, isn't it? Because you're in darkness
Hmm.
and there's people being backlit, and for some reason that just pulls me out of stuff. And
Yeah.
it's such a douchebag thing to say, but
Douchebag.
it's one of those things that just pulls me out of. Like, where's that light coming from?
Hmm.
um, but yeah, dude, I thought like the script was super super tight, really well constructed.
Yeah. See, I was the. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I thought the script was really good, but some of the dialogue in the script was just a little bit. I mean, they did cut most of the bad dialogue out, which is why I sort of rated the film higher. But there's some dialogue in the script that's just really kind of very on the nose and very
Mm,
unnecessary, and like those moments where it's just like Beth and Juno just kind of staring off, and then at the end where it's Sarah and Juno, and they just have that completely wordless face off, and just the facial and expressions and the body language, it just conveys so much, man. To be fair, I mean, you couldn't write that. You couldn't. I mean, you could write it, but it wouldn't come across very well on the page.
mm.
You know, I don't think anyway. I mean, maybe that's just maybe I need to get better at writing silent confrontations.
No, well, I think
That could
I
just
mean,
be
it's kind
me.
of what I said earlier.
Hmm,
There's once you kind of get on set and you're working with actors, there's so much that they can portray in a look that you can never really
exactly.
write down on a page.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of being on set and working with actors.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I didn't agree with you on the crawlers looking too buff as well, man. I mean, like I say, they are on a strictly kind of carnivore meat diet, so they're going to be pretty hench. And obviously, from a practical perspective, you've got to get guys in costumes because
Yeah.
if you'd have computer generated these things, then you'd have ended up with the cave, which, you know, that CGI has not aged well, as CGI tends not to do. So, guys in suits is definitely better. I mean, and you probably couldn't get like Javier Botet to just like play all the crawlers, otherwise they would have been infinitely more terrifying. But
Yeah.
he's only one man; he can only do so much. And yeah, horror should be bleak, man. I mean, it's supposed to be scary. This isn't like a fun horror movie, as like The Blob, for example, which was just it's just an amazingly good time. This is meant to be bleak. It's meant to be disturbing. Disturbing, scary horror. I think should be pretty bleak and should always end on a downer. The very best horror movies, like critically acclaimed, universally loved horror movies, they all have like downbeat endings. The
Mm,
more downbeat, the more memorable the ending is. If everyone survives and walks away, then you're just like, oh, okay, cool, that's nice. And then you forget
yeah.
about it. If everyone dies, like Sarah's like just stuck in that cave, complete losing her mind, that kind of sticks with you, I think. You know.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I mean, maybe it's just my particular kind of, my kind of proclivity or my sort of personal preference. I think it
Hmm.
was, I mean, I think you got some really good points there. I think the dialogue, you're absolutely right. There was some of it that was sort of too on the nose. I think it was more the construction of the screenplay that I really sort of enjoyed. This kind
Yeah,
of three
yeah.
act kind of
Mm,
structure that sort of built empathy and then built tension and then just, slammed you against the
Yeah.
wall with sort of balls out horror. I thought that,
Yeah.
that construction was really, really good. Yeah, maybe horror is. I mean, this is going to be a long journey for us, Lee. If it's all going to be bleak, man. I tell you what, because I'm a fun-loving guy, Lee.
Yeah.
This is probably why I don't engage with horror that much, right? Because it's, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, I
freaks
mean,
me out.
it's subjective, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
it's
totally.
at the end of the day, it's all subjective, and I think, like I said, I've said many a time, there are like, I think there are three types of horror movies. There are scary horror movies, traumatic horror movies, and fun horror movies.
Mm,
And I think this definitely falls into the scary kind of. For me, this
yeah,
kind of falls into the scary kind of territory because I'd happily watch it again. So it's not particularly traumatic, not for me anyway. But it's definitely not a fun one. You,
yeah,
you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
find yourself cheering at the screen on this one. You're just kind of hoping that everyone will drag themselves out of that cave alive.
Mm.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting little disagreements there, I feel, Lee. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
This is all good
Good stuff.
stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so what's on the agenda for next time?
Okay. Awesome. One of the greatest of all time. Next week, we are going to be taking a deep dive into the original and best John Carpenter's Halloween.
Oh, dude, amazing. I know you've been looking forward to this one for a long time. Me too. I
Yeah.
think this is going to be great. Yeah, I do look forward to hearing your insights on this, Lee. I think that would be awesome. Okay, so if you enjoyed the podcast, please hit like and subscribe. And if you feel like leaving a wonderful review or a rating, that will be especially helpful too. Please do check out our socials. And if you want to reach out to us at all, you can do so on script to scream podcast at gmail.com. And of course, any questions, any thoughts that you have, we'd love to hear them. And our socials will be in the show notes if you want to check in with us. But until next time, do take care.
Stay out of caves. Keep writing those scares.